much time is often spent thinking about what we should have done, the mistakes we made, the regrets we have. But what about all those things you did right? All those right decisions that you made, right choices? And how did those decisions and choices affect the rest of your life? So today we're going to talk about spending a little time reflecting upon and even celebrating what we did right in our lives. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Sharri Harmel, and this is the place where we talk about designing a fabulous next chapter. Our topics are related to specifically people, or I should say directed specifically to people over 50, but I hear from listeners all the time that anyone can gain ideas and even inspiration from our videos and conversations. So let's get started. Yes, we can spend a lot of our time thinking about what we wish we had done or said or focused on. Those darn regrets that hang around, just like cobwebs that we can't seem to free ourselves from. I think some of you have been up in the attic and experienced that. They're just sticky, right? But today I want you all to switch gears, put on a different hat or a different pair of glasses, and begin to make a list of what you did right in your life. And I'm going to start by sharing a few of my own. First, on the list of my right decisions is that I had the courage to find my son. For those of you who don't know, I got pregnant by my high school boyfriend my senior year of high school, and I was forced to give my son up for adoption. Now, I never really recovered from the loss of my child. And honestly, I made many poor decisions in the years that followed. But when I was in my early 50s, end of my 40s, early 50s, I said, enough. I'm going to find my son, no matter how flawed I am, no matter what the ramifications might be. I need to know that he's okay. So I reached out to the Catholic adoption agency that handled it all, and I opened the search for my child. And in 2009, they found him pretty quick. And my son and I connected first by letters through the agency and then email. And finally, we met in person the spring of 2010. I will never forget it. It was monumental, life-changing. My entire world shifted. It's now been 15 years. And I think finding my son actually not only changed my life, but I think it changed his as well. Being a birth mother, even today, believe it or not, is a difficult role. It's a difficult role to step in. I call it, even today, believe it or not, sort of like, Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter. There's something about it that has all sorts of connotations, but I don't care. The ramifications, though, of finding my son were significant. When I announced to my parents that I had found him and I was welcoming him into my life, I was disowned by my parents as well as my siblings. So I will share with you, sometimes that right decision will have sad or very painful ripple effects. And yet, I have to say, finding my son was one of my absolute top right decisions. Now, I'm sure many of you can relate in one way or another, but at the core, I want you to celebrate that your big right decisions were necessary for you to feel whole, for you to feel complete. Finding my son was one of the most right decisions I've ever made, regardless of the losses I incurred as a result of that choice. Another right decision is my daughter. Never shutting the door on my daughter completely, even though I experienced with her 2 estrangements. Sadly, estrangements are a sort of thing for adult children today. It's bizarre to me. It's actually a celebrated thing on social media for a particular age group is kind of crazy. But my daughter specifically made two partner choices over an 11-year period that both resulted in her choosing to cut me out of her life. Now, we all know that when people choose partners who are not healthy, those partners will often demand or find ways for that naysayer or that truthsayer to be cut out of their partner's circle of influence, even if it's a parent. Both relationships ended horribly for my daughter and were terribly sad for me. But what I did right is that I never really tightly shut the door to my daughter, even though she wanted nothing to do with me. I'd send cards, I'd send letters, even small gifts to her and my grandchildren. And finally, in 2023, she re-entered my life after leaving her abusive husband. As painful as it was over those years of estrangement, to hear nothing from my daughter other than angry, inaccurate accusations, I knew in my heart that I still loved her and that I would welcome her back into my life if she ever needed me. Now, our hearts can get a little fragile with repeated losses. So when reconnection happens with someone that you love, it needs to be gradual. But what I learned is that there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm estranged from my child, but I still love them. And I believe the relationship that I have with my daughter today only happened because I never completely shut the door of my heart. So as painful as it is, sometimes we have to accept that someone we care very much for doesn't want to be in a relationship with us. But let yourself accept whatever feelings you have around that person, that relationship, and do put a little bit of caution tape around your heart, but maybe never a brick wall. Now, shifting gears, Paris. Paris. My Paris adventure has been amazing in so many ways. Paris and Boston, to a certain extent, brought me back to life after my divorce. Paris's slogan of being the city of light has many meanings. She sure brought me back into the light. But it hasn't all been easy. Owning property in a country other than your own, dealing with a legal system that is very different from the one that you know, and a language that might be hard for you, a very different culture, hasn't been easy. But honestly, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Paris gave me so many more gifts than I could have ever imagined. So sometimes what we dream of creating or having at the beginning can feel incredibly difficult and complicated, and you might want to give it up because it's so hard. More times than I can count, I question my decision. But if you persevere with your dream, no matter how hard it is in the beginning, it just might end up being even more fabulous than you could have imagined it would ever be. Another right decision that I celebrate even today is that I went and got my master's in my, when did I begin? Maybe my very late 40s, because when I completed my master's, I went into the work world in an entirely different way as a woman who was over 50. So I enrolled in this master's program right before I filed for divorce. I did have a career path in mind. So I had the semblance of a dream, and I knew I needed a particular master's in order to make that happen. So I applied to the local college and began the program. Now, was it easy to go back to school considering I was older than most of my students' mothers? No, not in any way or form. I'll never forget the first semester. It was so hard. I cried more times than you could imagine as I was walking home from classes, because everything was hard, primarily technology, but also, going back to school, learning, getting your brain to remember things. It was all hard, but I stuck to it. I learned so much from my studies. I learned a lot from my younger fellow students. I learned about technology. All of that changed my life in so many positive ways. And while I was in the master's program, and that's what I want to share with you, not only was going back to school for me a right decision, but also I figured out what it was that I wanted to do while I was in my master's program. The master's was in mental health counseling, and I made the decision to not be a therapist, but actually that I wanted to work as a career counselor or a career coach in higher education. So I took my prior coaching experience, merged it with the counseling master's, and marched into the career office of the college where I was enrolled and offered up my services, if you want to call it that, for free. I volunteered because I wanted the experience and of giving workshops on resume writing and cover letter writing and interviewing or working specifically with students one-on-one. It was amazing. And even though I wasn't paid, I had specific hours, and that volunteer opportunity actually catapulted me into a fantastic practicum at the University of Central Florida. And that helped me to get a job at a top university after I graduated in Boston, which is where I wanted to return to after my divorce. So I share this because seeing your dream and narrowing down the options and then focusing in on what it is that you want to create might mean that you have to do something else added to it. You might have to, sign up for a course. You might have to sign up for a program. You might have to figure out a way to learn a new skill. And it might mean you have to volunteer, not make any money, but volunteer because the experience is actually your payment. That can all be right decisions that brings you just a step closer to whatever it is that is your next chapter dreams. My upcoming book is meant to help you to do just that. It will be coming out the very end of this year, and it's titled Design Your Fabulous Next Chapter. Of course it is, right? This book is all about the 7-step framework that I learned myself and then decided to put it down on paper and share it with others, share it with people just like you. So sign up for the VIP waitlist for the book. It costs nothing. You'll then know when the book is published, and you'll get a few helps in the meantime. So do sign up. The next right decision I made was I stayed in control of my money. Now, I have a background in money. My undergraduate degree is in finance and MBA, and basically I started in banking for a short period of time, and then I became a stockbroker. So I've studied and worked in the financial field, but that was a long time ago. What I did do right was I made the decision when I stopped working to raise our family to not relinquish knowledge of how our family finances were being spent or organized. I also was a coach after a period of time in the business world. And so consequently, I stayed in kind of that mindset or continued to grow my knowledge in that particular area. But like I said, I really stayed on top of how we were spending our money within our family, how we were growing our retirement plans, if you want to call it that, within the family. And as a result, the money aspect of my transition to being single in my 50s probably wasn't as traumatic as it might have been had I not educated myself along the way. And since my divorce, I've made, a couple of financial advisor shifts because I watch things. And I also pay close attention to my budget and expenses. And I think that is key to feeling safe. money is interesting. And I truly believe that women don't talk as much about money as they should. In my years of my marriage, I interacted with a lot of men on board levels, and men talk about money all the time. They talk about money on the golf course. They talk about money after they're finished playing tennis. They talk about money and even money ideas when they get together in social settings. It's quite fascinating to me where women never do that. I don't know why, but we don't. I belong to so many book clubs, and I have been involved in many different women organizations, professional women organizations, and no one talks about money. It's really fascinating. And yet most of us are going to end up having to deal with money and having to deal with possibly being solo later in life. And many women today who are professionals are actually out earning their husbands or their partners. And so consequently, it is something we need to talk about more. But you can start with making sure, how do I spend my money? Because how I spend my money determines what I can allocate where, right? Some of it you can control, but some of it is discretionary and you can make changes. I use Excel. Some people love Quicken or QuickBooks or whatever they're called today. I never liked that. I'm an Excel gal. I lay it out every year. 2024, as an example, laid out each month and all of the different categories, and I carry it one year into the next year from a category standpoint and make changes as needed. And each month I know exactly what I spent and what I spent on, what I spent my money on. That's the only way I can feel safe and secure enough to decide I'm going to travel here, I'm going to go there. Or let's say you want new carpeting for your living room, or a garden design for your backyard, whatever it is, you have to figure out where you're going to allocate your funds. In my Facebook group, actually, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into money. So if that's your jam, join the private Facebook group. But if you're not, you don't like Facebook, you have no desire to join a group on Facebook, find ways to educate yourself about money. Set yourself up so that you've got an Excel document that you work off of every single month, or you use Quicken Books or whatever it is, even if it's pen and paper. Keep track of your expenses. Figure out ways to cut what isn't essential so that you have the funds to do what it is that, those extra things that you really want to add to your life. This particular right decision is a perfect example of how many of our right decisions have actually multiple benefits in our lives. It's that ripple effect, the positive ripple effect. By keeping on top of your money, you will sleep better. You will have the funds to be able to invest in the special added things that you want to take on. Choosing healthy habits is another example of a right decision that has multiple benefits. Healthy habits means you'll have less medical expenses and you can continue to enjoy doing the things that you love to do. So that's just a few of my right decisions. I want you to, go through this process yourself. Figure out what are those big choices and decisions that you've made in your life that have positively impacted your life in a way that's far beyond whatever that right decision was. Our right decisions, as well as our bad decisions, but our right decisions also have positive, ripple effects in our lives. So I want you to do that. Well, share if you can, because we often think about and spend a lot of time talking about what didn't work out, what we need to change, what we need to do differently. But sometimes we need to just stop and acknowledge ourselves for the right decisions that we've made in our lives. And sometimes those right decisions can be hard, right? No pun intended. Someone once said, sometimes the hardest choices and the right choices are actually the same choices. I think that's brilliant, actually. So celebrate all your right choices and do share if you feel comfortable doing so. This is an amazing community. I read all of your comments, and I just love that sometimes you're commenting and other people are commenting with you. So do share, because you might inspire someone else who reads your comment. And that's what this is all about. Now, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes all the difference as far as growing this channel, because the more subscribers we have, the more YouTube obviously will share this particular channel with others. And that's how, that allows me actually to bring more support as you create your own fantastic next chapter, and we're paying it forward. That's what this is all about. So thank you, everyone. Take care. A biento.